On this episode of the Entrepreneur Wrap, we wish you a happy holiday season as Brett and I talk about the latest with Uber and why they had to notify everybody that they may just be following you everywhere you go.
We dig into Oprah's investment in Weight Watchers and what you may not know about your Amazon Prime membership.
We also talk about the GOAT, Michael Jordan, and the hedgehog concept. Something for everybody on this edition of the Entrepreneur Wrap.
Check us out.
It's Entrepreneur Wrap episode 007. Happy holidays, y'all. It's David Brickley and Brett Regan.
Heyo.
Hello, Brett.
How's it going?
Also have Talkback Mike. Let's see, is Salty still in the house? I see.
Salty's here.
John O.C.
Jockfella.
All right, so yeah, we are now on Facebook Live as we are every single show, testing out a little more green screen action here. And yeah, if we show videos or what have you, you can always check that out on Facebook Live. But always as well on iTunes, you can download the podcast, subscribe. And do all of that. Moving on to the relevant business news, we always talk about what we're reading, what we learned this week as entrepreneurs. We start, as always, with the business news that we want to discuss. So, Brett, I'll throw it to you.
Okay. So last week we had discussed a Fiat and Chrysler partnership for autonomous vehicles, and I wanted to stay in that same vein because Uber had been the pioneer in the space along with Google, but it looks as if Uber will stop its self-driving pilot in San Francisco.
So wasn't that they killed it after a week, essentially?
Yes, so it's very new, and this was a pilot that was rolling out with Volvo. So there was the Volvo X90 SUV, which you can see up here on the screen. I think they had 14 different vehicles, and if you ordered an Uber, they weren't going to tell you if you're going to be getting an autonomous. It wasn't something that you'd signed up for. They were just trying to pilot it out.
At this point, it's still someone behind the wheel, but they're not driving?
I think this was
100% autonomous?
Self-driving.
Really?
And this was a small pilot. Well, I think it just takes a lot of groundwork. It's not like you could just take it out and say go anywhere. It's in a specific area so that if people were saying, like, here's my destination, and they were confident with it. I don't have all the information for this, but the overall, I guess, issue here was they were butting heads with the DMV and the Attorney General in California. So they had a meeting, and the result of that meeting was that the pilot was killed in San Francisco. There are other pilot programs going on in a few other cities. Right? Pittsburgh, maybe?
East,
yeah, Pittsburgh is the only other one right now. But it doesn't seem like good news that the San Francisco pilot would be the one to...
Oh, come on, John.
That the San Francisco pilot would be the one to fail. You would think that community and the DMV there and the Attorney General would really try and be behind it because eventually this will be something that's occurring in every city in the United States. So for San Francisco to be the first place to do it would be great. So there must have been some serious issues. But overall, they just said it wasn't safe. And that's going to be an issue for all autonomous vehicles. That's an issue for Tesla. Mm-hmm. They've had a few deaths now where people were doing the autopilot mode and something occurred that led to an injury, death, accident, what have you.
I feel like that the numbers are going to, robots essentially driving vehicles will do better than humans. I think there's 75 traffic fatalities every single day. I think as we move more towards autonomous vehicles, if that number gets down to 50 and then 35 and then 21, I think people will then understand there's going to be a few deaths, of course, but it's going to be lower than the alternative.
Sure. There's a couple issues with that. One is they need to come up with some sort of safety rating. I may have mentioned this on a previous episode, but I was listening to a podcast. They were talking about Tesla, and in the same way that when they moved from horses to vehicles, they needed some sort of metric to describe how powerful. They came up with horsepower. Yeah. Because most people understood that, hey, a horse is as powerful. If you have something that's 5 horsepower, that's more powerful than 5 horses or equal to. So the description there, and I wish I had a source for this, but they were describing that they need to have some sort of human safety measure. So if it's a 5 human safety, then that means it's 5 times safer than the human on average across the board. The real issue becomes is that I think of myself as a safe driver, and if I think of myself as a safe driver, then I would assume that most people think of themselves as a good, safe driver, and that they can control a car better than a
But I'll tell
robot.
you what, man, maybe because you just went from like an 85 to a 2016, right?
I got both.
just like the lane keep assist and the blind spot awareness and the parking assist, like I guarantee you that makes me from a C plus driver to a minus driver. All those things help me tremendously. So I can only imagine if all those things plus, the autonomous part of it was
right. But then you are handing over control completely, and the idea is not to have the autopilot mode, because really, if you have to sit there and be focused anyway to be able to grab the wheel in the event of an issue, I think that may be that's almost harder than just saying I'm going to give up control completely, because if you put that on the car manufacturer and saying we're going to be in the back seat just cruising here, then you've got to be able to say like, hey, there's no issues.
Well,
but
then there's like the possibility of 3 school children crossing the street. And is the car going to swerve to save the children but kill you because you're going to hit a pole? Like,
I mean, those are the ethics issues, and that's all of these all these companies have hired, philosophers.
My point is, you're never going to be able to
coaches.
find a car that's so smart that you can avoid every single possible issue, because there's going to be a situation where there's a 18-year-old female on one corner and an 18-year-old female or male on another corner, and the car's going to have to hit one of them, and you're going to have to the car's going to have to pick at some point. So I think there's always going to be a scenario where the car's going to kill somebody, essentially.
Right.
0.1% chance.
And not to go too far off, but in those occasions, it's who's liable for that. Because if Tesla is liable, if a car goes off the road and runs into somebody and kills them, that only has to happen a few times before, under our current system, they're bankrupt.
Yep.
So, in previous cases where Toyota gas pedal was stuck down.
Well, who's liable if a plane falls out of the sky? Does everybody sue United Airlines or?
Potentially. It depends on what the cause is.
Yeah.
So if it's a negligence on their part and it was a part that they knew was faulty, so it's just kind of a little bit of a new world where you would have a robot in charge, and then you would want to be able to sue the company if something goes wrong, but nothing can be perfect 100% of the time. So I think from a legal standpoint and a regulatory standpoint, there's going to have to be a little bit of a relaxed legislation on these type of pilot programs in order for them to get out. But I certainly wouldn't be, if a member of my family or myself died in one of these pilot programs, I wouldn't chalk it up to, hey man, it's progress.
Yeah,
I would be furious as well. So it's tough.
I wanted to update you on the last show, so episode 6. We talked about how Uber was getting in trouble because they were following you after they dropped you off. Essentially, they were still tracking you. What's funny is a day later, I got a push notification on my phone saying Uber is currently tracking you in the background. Do you want to accept this? And I said no. But something must have happened after that article came out. Maybe some, like you said, a legal standpoint. Someone said, hey, if you don't let everybody know you're doing this, we're going to sue you. And they did that push notification, I think, to almost everybody that had the Uber app on their phone. So that was interesting and a quick update. But now I think one of the reasons that they were doing that is Uber is completely revamping the way you set your destination. Now, instead of saying I want to go to an address, you can say I want to go where Brett Regan is. So if you're moving down, downtown, or you're bar hopping or what have you, I can tell the Uber to follow you essentially. So within the 5 minute, if you go from one bar to another, it's going to know that, and it's going to drive down the block a little bit more. So now it's going from point A to point B. It sounds like you're going to have to accept it. Like David wants to know your location. Can he follow you in order to get to you? And then you could say, okay. But essentially, you're going to be able to open up all your contacts. And instead of an address, you can say, go wherever Brett is right now.
Yeah. Now, it's interesting, but it makes me wonder, too, how many other apps are doing something similar. It seems like every time I go onto Google, I have to allow location services.
Yep.
But if I'm leaving that up in the background, because sometimes I'll go and look and I've got 4 tabs open that have been for weeks.
Yep.
Are they still able to track location the entire time? Could they, give that information to retailers to say like, oh, he's going to the mall or he's going to these different places? So I would assume that a lot of these apps that already track location, if you keep them up, and I do oftentimes just because I forget about it, or at least for a day or so, that maybe those are doing the same thing, and it's not that uncommon.
I do feel like as a society, too, like people have just given up their rights in a way, their privacy. They don't care as much anymore. Like you mentioned before, the whole thumbprint on your iPhone. I mean, people just want to have things easier and more convenient, and they're willing to give up their privacy for that. So that's just becoming a more norm, maybe different than 50 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure how I feel about it. I guess, there's a lot of people that think about, the government getting all this information.
Sure.
And people are very suspicious if the government came and said, hey, we've got this thing and you can put your thumbprint.
Well, think about like when you go to
no.
CVS and they want your phone number every time. What do you think they're doing with that information? Now
Right.
they know for the last 3 years what you've bought, so then they can have coupons for those certain things, or they can sell that to third parties and say, whatever, Brett's buying Gillette razors every 2 months, so Gillette's going to try to go after you and add them to your list and have your phone number and information. So,
but if you want to save $13.86 today, you
people
put
do
it.
Yep. For my story, Uber was kind of going off of what you just said, but ABC will create original series for Snapchat, starting with a Bachelor themed show. So this is new that The Bachelor, starting on Tuesday, January 3rd, is going to pretty much produce a weekly Snapchat story, 10 original episodes, all on Snapchat. So it's going to the mobile device. It made me think a little bit. I recently watched like a 45-minute HBO Real Time with Bill Maher episode, all on my iPhone 6 Plus. And I also found myself watching NFL Thursday Night Football on Twitter on my couch with my 50-inch big screen off. So I do think you think who the hell is going to watch these long episodes on their phone? But I do think we're being kind of reprogrammed in a way to everybody thought that everything has to be on the large TV in your living room. But I think people are becoming more used to watching long format type shows or entertainment on your iPhone device.
I think if you're by yourself, then yes, maybe. If you're with a group, you definitely want to put it on a larger screen. However, do you have Chrome or Apple TV
Chromecast.
or anything? I'm using that constantly. I'll look up something because I don't want to bring out my computer. I'll get it on my phone and look up comedians in cars getting coffee.
Yeah.
And then as soon as it's up, I just push it to the TV. Mm-hmm. And, I actually, since our last conversation on DirecTV a couple weeks ago, I have canceled my DirecTV.
Yeah, I saw that go down.
That was more of a customer service issue. But
principle.
I just really don't feel that handcuffed. I think the only reason why I really wanted DirecTV in the first place was for NFL.
Yep.
But I'm pushing right from my phone right to the screen, and it's not perfect, but it's getting a lot better.
And like you said, that's going to become more and more easier, and especially when you move from 4G to 5G, which is supposed to be 100 to 1,000 times faster.
Yep.
It's just going to be easier to push that stuff to
a
screen.
the house, if you already have Wi-Fi, it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yep. All right, so what we learned this week is entrepreneurs. I'll throw it to you once again.
I'm having a hard time doing this, but I'm getting better at it. But it's don't let the urgent get in the way of the important.
Okay. I like it.
So, there's tons of emails all the time. There's tons of whack-a-mole things. And if you take care of all the whack-a-mole things one by one, oftentimes the bigger project that requires more of your attention and more focus doesn't get done.
We talked about this last show, like all the stuff
happen.
that you were doing a few months ago. It wasn't necessarily very large projects, but it was taking 11 minutes out of your day, each and every project, following up on an invoice, looking over an SOW, looking at an MSA, what have you. And those 11 minutes times, 24 projects in a day, all of a sudden you're working a 12-hour shift and you don't feel like you got a lot done. It's just a lot of whack-a-mole things.
Right. But yeah, I think, for your clients, you want to be able to hit deadlines. But if somebody gives you something that's unrealistic, sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is just say, hey, not going to be able to get to this today. Here's when I can get to it. Here's the timeline. And then you buy yourself some time so that that's not the thing taking away from potentially another client who you really need to focus on. So don't let the urgent get in the way of the important.
All right, for me, a little bit of an epiphany this week because we've had situations where we've signed a brand new client and the tentpole event or the project isn't even 35% complete. And they're already giving us more work. Like, hey, I want to introduce you to this department, or, hey, I know we're right in the middle of this, but let's talk out this other thing coming up right after. And part of me is like, well, they don't even know if we're going to do a good job at the big tentpole event, or they don't even know if we're going to give an A+ effort at that. We know it because I think we're confident in our abilities, and we have the case studies and testimonials to show for it. But you would think most clients would wait till a project is absolutely complete to make their assessment, but they don't. And what I took from that is, I think, when you have, calls and you have presentations and everything's very organized and you're leading the client to a water in a way, they like that. And they like to be told, like, hey, here's what we need from you. Here's the action steps for us. Here's the action steps for you. And here's how we're going to get all this done. In a world of deadlines, in a world of, the digital industry that's constantly moving and constantly evolving day to day, I think to work with a vendor like ourselves that says, hey, here's how we're going to do it. Here's what we need from you. Here's how we're going to get it done. And here are the calendar of deadlines. I think it's refreshing for them, and they want to work on more projects that are that organized, because maybe the projects that we don't work with them on are just all over the place, and it's always a big mess, which causes more stress. And I gave John O.C. some props this week. He presented me with, here's an update on this project, and gave me 19 bullet points. And as an employer, if your employee also keeps you in a loop as well, you're like, this is amazing. I don't feel stressed. I don't have to ask for a bunch of ETAs. Where are we at with this? What's going on? And now I realize that I feel good about that. So, of course, the client's going to feel that same way when you keep them in the loop.
Yeah. All of our clients across the board are understaffed, and they're incredibly busy. I mean, one client in particular, every individual contact on the marketing team that we work with is spread so thin that they could never really knock out and give their best to any one project. So
it's always given 10% to 10 different projects.
So if they can bring in additional resources to help them with their vision and to collaborate on that and do a better job and the budget's there, then I think that, all of these clients across the board, they just start working with us. They understand that we get it. We're talking the same language. Yeah. We have capabilities. We're presenting.
But I started noticing that pattern, that clients were giving us more work before we were even 50% done with the first ever project. And I kind of took a step back, why is that? And I think we're almost selling ourselves with the preparation leading up to the event more so than the event itself. I don't think the event itself is the most impressive thing we actually do. It's the 4 calls, the pitch, the presentation, the emails, picking up our phone, and just the overall conversation leading up to the project that is the most impressive, that has them coming back for more.
Yeah, I agree. And I think for a few of our employees here, John and Mike being a couple of them, they were brought on in a time where we had multiple projects, multiple overlapping deadlines, and they hadn't necessarily proved themselves, but we needed people.
Yeah.
And then they came in and they rose to the occasion. So, I think that's the spot that we're finding ourselves in, is that a lot of our clients need a lot of help right now because these departments are growing in terms of what they're responsible for and not so much in what they have in resources.
And I guess if you make your employer, you make your client make their life easier, then you become extremely valuable, and they want to give you more things to take on because they trust you and they know it's going to be well received. All right, so moving on to what we're reading, I want to give you an update. I have read.
Congratulations.
A chapter here, chapter 4 on the Jim Collins Good to Great after a 2-week hiatus. Pretty good stuff. You mentioned something last week, how sometimes there's some stuff that makes your skin crawl a little bit, but you try to pull a little bit here and there and make your own assessment or your own, I don't know. What were your words that you used?
Pull my own insights.
Yeah, exactly.
Trust your gut after you read everything.
Chapter 4 for Good to Great was all about the hedgehog concept. I know you've read the book. I don't know if you remember it.
Yep.
But
the fox is good at many things. The hedgehog is good at one particular thing.
And that whole analogy, I was kind of like the skin crawl moment, this is kind of BS. But as you read through it, it makes a lot of sense. So, Mike, if you can throw up this hedgehog concept. But this is pretty good, and I think if you and I discuss this maybe in a meeting in the future, I think it might open up some insight about what we're doing. But the 3 circles are essentially what you're deeply passionate about, and we're looking at this at Facebook Live right now, what drives your economic engine and what you can be the best in the world at. And, of course, the middle is kind of what becomes your company or your life plan. But the hedgehog concept is not a goal to be the best, a strategy to be the best, an intention to be the best, a plan to be the best. It's an understanding of what you can be the best at, and that distinction is absolutely critical, which I liked how he broke that down.
Yeah, I did like that portion of the book. I think it, especially because it was supported with multiple case studies of here's a company that was good in this particular area.
So,
I think like Walgreens.
Yeah,
maybe.
So Walgreens, their concept was simple. They want to be the best, most convenient drugstore with high profit per customer visit. That's it. That's the one mission statement, and everything they did was into that. And from 1975 to 2000, they exceeded the stock market by 15 times. They beat GE, They beat Coke, they beat Intel. I mean, some incredible stuff. And all it was, you know what? Let's just change our concept to be the best, convenient, and high profit per customer visit, not necessarily high profit margin per store.
Yeah,
which is a
slight
tweak.
I wonder what their hedgehog concept looks like now with competition from Amazon and other vendors. And that was the one takeaway maybe that I felt from that, is that the black portion of the graph in our occasion is constantly moving.
Yeah.
So I think we could come up with a kind of generic, within the digital umbrella, blah, 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 but to say like this one thing we're really great at, it was different last year than it is today. And I assume that next
But
year
as
will be
I
a
was,
little
I was
different.
even thinking about this. But as we do more production work, are we going to become the best production company in the world? Like, I mean, there's a lot of production companies that have been around for 50, 60, 70 years that have been doing films. Like, it's going to be tough to be the best in the world. So I think hey, we'll be good at that, but that's not going to be our core
But
business.
I think one of the lessons from here, though, is focus on that hedgehog concept and ignore the rest.
Right.
So I do think sometimes for us, in this stage at least, continuing to dip our toes and figuring out, we don't know necessarily what we could be the world's best at. And in 5 years, my thought is it looks a lot different than what we're doing today.
True.
But that's another occasion, though, of like, those are really good ideas to have swimming in the back of your head so that when you
and
come
constantly
up with a
talk
situation,
about it and revisit it to understand what the what the goal is, right?
Absolutely.
All right. So did you make any progress on your
I'm
book?
on about page 50 something.
That's good.
In The Outsiders. I really like it a lot. It is, again, The Outsiders, 8 unconventional CEOs and their radically rational blueprint for success.
Okay.
This is kind of the Warren Buffett school of CEO, where they're not flashy. These are not the, Zuckerbergs of the world that are on the cover of Forbes magazines. These are sometimes boring companies, but in terms of beating the market and beating their peers in a similar way to where Jim Collins looks at companies that were outperforming, The Outsiders does the same thing in a slightly different way. It was how much profit per share are they bringing back to the shareholder.
Okay.
So for me, this is a super interesting book because it looks at capital allocation and the metrics by which they measure their success, which tend to be very different from typical companies. So on Wall Street, it's always about reported earnings. How much are you reporting for your earnings? Where in these particular CEOs tended to focus more on cash money coming back into the company, which for me,
but that doesn't necessarily help your stock.
What's that?
That doesn't necessarily help your stock.
If you're flush with cash and you can give it back to the shareholder, absolutely.
Okay.
Because if you're doing reported earnings and Uber is worth all this money, if you're a shareholder, it's only valuable if you're selling it because the increase in share value. But if you have tons of money coming back in, that's money that you can then give back to the shareholder in dividends or other types of payments. So I'm only 50 pages in, but super interesting book. It's not overly technical, but very heavily focused on capital allocation and these different types of CEOs who are a little more behind the scenes, which I think is very cool.
Very cool. All right, so moving on to our tech tip. I'll go first on this one. Something that I think a lot of people out there have Prime, right? $99, you get your 2-day free shipping. And I don't think you realize you have Amazon Prime, which has a ton of movies and original TV shows, but there's also Amazon Music.
Are you saying there's more to Prime?
Yeah. But Amazon Music, the app, is very similar to Spotify. I love Spotify, pay $10 a month. I don't have to download music. I have my playlist, listen to it at the gym. I think it's a great platform. But I checked out Amazon Music, and if you're already paying the $99, it's something that everybody should check out because they pretty much have all the same options and albums and artists that are on the Spotify type platforms. And if it's already free, all you have to do is log in with your Amazon username and password. Then it's a good app. So I would recommend checking it out.
So how did you come across it? How did that cross your path to where you thought of it? Because I'm pretty familiar with Prime, and I didn't know until you mentioned it.
I just knew that with Prime you get a lot of stuff. I was just on my phone like, you know what? I was looking at the top apps, I think. And it was like
just
94, I think so, yeah. And I just like, you know what? I think if you have a username, this is free. And I typed my username in, and it was free. And I started making my playlist right away. So if you're looking for a Spotify type thing, and you don't know if you want to start paying $10 a month, if you already have the Amazon Prime membership, it's definitely worth looking at.
I mean, that is their strategy, 100%, is to say, here's TV, here's music. You're already doing the free shipping. The $99 is
the best deal in town.
$99.
Yeah.
Just the shipping alone.
I know. If you get like 2 things
just
already.
Just the shipping alone has paid for itself for me within the first few months. Anybody over Christmas
Not only that, but it's changed the industry completely. I feel like Walmart or whoever is out there, they have to either give free shipping or give 2-day, because now I feel like at least the online society, they want their stuff in 48 hours now. That's just like become the common thread. So if you say 7 to 10 days shipping, what?
Yep.
No, I'm going to go to Amazon, which I've done before. I've gone to Nike.com and wanted sweats or whatever. Let me see if Amazon has I have free Prime, which just directs you to that same monster every single time.
Well,
just to cut in really quick.
Yeah.
with the holiday season, they're doing a great job, but it has been a little tough.
Oh, Talkback Mike not liking the Amazon service, huh? Yeah.
Been tough, what, to get your shipping on time?
Yeah, we've had a lot of shipments not make it.
Oh, here
the
with
guarantee time, yeah.
gear, yeah, we've had a few things.
Well, it's funny because with the 2-day shipping before the holiday season, it would sometimes come the next day, which I think they did on purpose. Like, we'll probably get it to you the next day, but we're going to just, we're going to surprise you instead of guarantee you that. But I guess it's been the opposite with the holiday season. By the way, I think they hire millions upon millions of people seasonally just to take care of all the packages, which I'm sure is crazy.
Yeah. Well, and that was the Zappos model in the beginning, and I think Amazon maybe stole a little bit of that. But Zappos would guarantee a ship date, but then if they could beat it, they always would. Because if you're expecting something in 5 business days and it comes in 2, you're super pumped.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That was something where Amazon took over. But I've just noticed that for my household during the holidays, every gift that we bought was on Amazon.
Yeah.
Aside from some things that we just couldn't do. We made like some pictures and put them in frames for people. But for anything that we were like sending to kids, it was buy it on Amazon. Do you want it to be wrapped? Yes. Do you want it to be shipped? Yes. Free Amazon Prime.
Oh, they have a wrap feature now.
There's things that you can wrap on Amazon.
That's
so we got,
awesome.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Kids stuff going to them, and we didn't have to leave the house. So the alternative to that would be, go to the store, wait in line.
Well, Mike, what would you
toy.
say in the office, like the percentage of equipment that we buy on Amazon? I know some of it like is on B&H with high-profile equipment, but Amazon has to be
north
80.
North of 80.
80%.
80%. Yeah.
B&H is
Of everything we buy in this office is from Amazon.
Well, because it's all there.
I know.
So why would you start somewhere else just in case?
It's like you go to CVS, you get your deodorant, your razor, and your shampoo. Why would you get your shampoo at Vaughn's, your razor at the gas station?
So we go to Amazon first because they probably have it, and then if we don't, then we go and
Yeah.
look for it at B&H. But that's what they want to be.
But
They want to be the first place you go to buy anything.
But what a great marketing tactic, because the free shipping really, I think, mentally, well, I get free shipping at this like store, so I'm just going to go here every time and see if they have it first, which for $99, maybe they don't make money on that part of it, but they make money because just like the same.
It's a volume.
Yeah, it's the same way like, people come into a bar for free. Yeah, you don't charge cover, but then you make $100 in drinks.
Yeah. But I mean, the volume of what they're doing, because not only is it free shipping, but they're cheaper than everywhere else.
That's true.
So, I mean, maybe you can beat it in another store if there's like a clearance sale or something. But for the most part, if you go to Amazon first, you're going to find
there's
the
a lot of
cheapest
people
price,
that
free
get
shipping.
annoyed. So if you want to buy, what is this microphone stand? A ProLine microphone stand. Their SEO is so good. It's always number 1 on Google.
Right.
And then ProLine.com, who's the official microphone stand, they're 2 or 3 or 4. So people just click the first link and almost feel like that's the only way you can get it. So anyway.
Yeah.
So guys, going off of that, is there even 5 years from now? Is there a future
Ben Salton
for,
on in the
yeah?
in the
Is there a
house.
future for stores and malls? Even 5
Yes.
years from now, what's it going to look like?
Yeah.
I think the future of all of that looks very much like a showcase store. So when I walk into an Apple store, a lot of times they don't have what I need.
Or is it like
but I can use it.
is it like IKEA almost, where they have the warehouse downstairs and you could just pick it up? Or
I don't think so, because warehouse space in San Diego in the future, like you want to be able to get something to someone that day.
but how do you get it to them that day if it's coming from Florida? Like you're gonna have to have a
Not
state.
from Florida, but I think those are going to be the places way out in the cut. But you're going to look at the flagship store, and you're going to go into a Walmart, and you're going to see a lot of these products, and some of them you can get, the deodorants and the quick stuff.
Yeah.
But if you want a television, they don't have a big warehouse full of TVs. They got a wall of TVs. You say, I want that one, and then it comes to you
That night.
later that day or wherever. But I do think it's really important to come in and touch and feel something. I wouldn't feel comfortable buying a brand new.
Clothes are tough too. You got to try them on, in my opinion.
I agree. Yeah, clothes are difficult,
Yeah.
but it's, clothes are not that big. You can fold them and put them into big thing. I mean, if you're at a Banana Republic, they've got an entire store full of crap plus a back stock. But that's kind of the model, I think, where, oftentimes, though, you can go into those stores and they're like, oh, we don't have it. But furniture stores like West Elm, Crate and Barrel, Pottery Barn, you go in and it's this beautiful store.
And they deliver.
And if you want anything.
Couches too, like a couch store. You don't take it home that day usually, unless you
So
have a huge
that's
trailer.
like the furniture store model, or like a West Elm. I don't know if you're familiar. West Elm, I think, is, I don't know who the parent company is, Pottery Barn or something like that, but it's like younger, hipper. But yeah, just a huge store full of really nice stuff. They have some things in
and we
stock,
talked about this,
but everything else is shipped to you.
Yesterday. But Walmart, I've read a lot of articles. They're kind of shaking in their boots right now, because they used to be, if you needed anything about anything, the always low prices, always. and people would go to Walmart for all their needs. But now it's like, I'll just order on Amazon. I'll get it in a couple of days.
Yeah, and to not have to get into a vehicle is a huge deal. To not have to do that. Plus, I do think in the next 5 to 10 years, especially in cities, if you live in Manhattan, you don't need a car.
Yeah.
If you live in San Francisco, you don't need a car, and you probably don't have a car unless you're really wealthy because parking, and you're certainly not going to own a home with, tons of parking. So the younger generation, I think, is going to get to a point where if you can get an Uber and it can get you around where you need to go, and you can order, like, the one reason that you wouldn't use Uber is because, like, well, shit, what about groceries or, like, picking stuff up? If you're like, well, I'm ordering all my groceries on Amazon, and if I need a couch, I don't need to, like, have a pickup truck. I order it, and I go into the store, and I look at it, and I say, bring this to my house and deliver it and set it up. There's just going to be less need for a vehicle, for college-age students and for young adults until they have kids. So anything that makes
and
life
especially,
more
the 17-year-old that's growing up in this new world where Amazon is the monster, as they become 19, 20, 21, 22, it's just going to be, that's what they expect, and that's what they're going to use. They never even grew up in an environment where they had to go down to Walmart to buy X. They just always ordered it online.
But what I'm maybe a little bit excited for, and this maybe is because we live in Hipsterville, San Diego.
Yeah.
But I love the idea of, like, a local butcher shop near my house and, like, a local bakery, because those I would go to.
Yeah.
I would buy my meats there, and I would buy my breads at the bakery, and then all the other crap. I don't need to go to, like, the local market to buy salt from a vendor.
It's always a pain, yeah.
Yeah, so I want to find people that specialize and are really great.
And even,
things.
when you run out of toothpaste, you're like, I got to stop by CVS after work today and get toothpaste. Like that stuff, if it's on your doorstep.
Right. But if
convenient.
Amazon puts a CVS or a Walmart out of business, I don't feel like, the American dream, like the corner drugstore. Like, those are conglomerates anyway that have been putting the mom and pop shops out. So I'd rather have one huge conglomerate, and then it opens up the space for higher end products, better stuff in the little town that you're in, and you can go and grab, meats and cheeses and breads and cakes and all that kind of stuff.
But yeah, it looks like, I think Walmart's up around 100. Well, the family fortune's $130 billion. But I was just talking about, like, how it doesn't matter how big you are. Another person can just come and completely kill your business. Like, it's pretty sad how big Walmart is. And if they don't make some drastic changes in the next 10 years, they could be the next Blockbuster or Circuit City.
Yeah.
Because Amazon came in and changed the game.
Although, one piece of insight that I didn't think about, we met with someone who was a, higher end marketing manager at a retail drugstore.
Yes.
So think of CVS, Walgreens, Eckerd's, those type of things. And, we were just having kind of a conversation about different things. And they said, the one real value that they have is if they ever want to deliver drugs, which in the end, people want to be able to deliver prescriptions. The people who really need them are the ones that maybe don't have cars or, elderly people who don't want to get up and go get it. They have those retail locations in the middle of every major city. So in those occasions, there may be something where foot traffic continues to dwindle, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they need to shut that place down. Maybe all that square footage...
It becomes the headquarters for all the deliveries.
All that square footage becomes a delivery hub, and if you've got a couple of those in the middle of San Francisco, try doing that now with a startup and getting a delivery hub that close.
And maybe
to
instead
the
of
city.
5 checkers, you have 5 Uber-type drivers that just drive these deliveries out all day, every day, picking up prescriptions or picking up deodorant or whatever, and just driving it out to the people within the mile radius or what have you.
Yeah,
but even reading Good to Great, this is obviously back in 2000, but there was 9 Walgreens in a 1 mile radius in San Francisco. Like, their whole goal was, like, we want to be walking distance for everybody.
Right.
And you see that with Starbucks, Subway, and some of the big names.
So when you're thinking about, like, oh man, could a Walgreens go out of business? Their business model will shift, but that's where, I guess like a Warren Buffett would look at that and say, well, how low can it go until people are looking at it for the wrong reasons, saying Walgreens can't survive? The value of their real estate is incredible. I mean, if you look around a Manhattan and just to San Francisco,
how about brand awareness?
They're everywhere, right? People know about those,
No.
so there's a ton of value left in those companies where the retail locations don't have to always be a noose around their neck, they could be able to shift that and say, hey, we've got strategic centers here, and Amazon does not have that.
Yeah.
And if Amazon wanted to buy those, it's going to cost them a lot of money these
Right.
days, because Walgreens has been doing this for 50 years.
Yep.
Well, one of the things Amazon's doing now too is with the Alexa app
Yeah,
device, where you
I
can
asked
just
for one of
say
those for
reorder-
Christmas. Yeah.
Reorder something, just buy it.
The push. You mean push to the push buttons or whatever for like
No,
detergent?
Alexa is the
The Siri thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you would just ask and say, hey, I need tape. And then, after a while, they know what kind of tape and what you've ordered in the past. But you can just look in your fridge. Hey, Alexa, I need
What about Echo?
milk.
Isn't that another one?
Echo
Amazon
is
Echo.
Amazon.
But I thought Amazon.
Alexa is Google.
Yeah, you're talking about Amazon Echo, I think.
No, I think Alexa is like the name of the.
Oh, I think it's
the
Echo.
person you talk
No,
to.
I'm pretty sure that Echo is
Amazon.
Amazon, and then Alexa is the Google product. But they're very similar. There's been a few videos where they're going back and forth.
Yeah, Amazon Echo Dot is the Amazon version, and I think you're right. Alexa is Amazon developer. Amazon Alexa, he's right too. There's two of them.
Well,
Kinda
what's the Google?
I don't know.
No, what's the Google one?
We'll figure that out.
Yeah, Alexa's the personality, but I think the device is called something else.
Well, let's find the Google
Wait,
counterpart.
so it's Amazon Echo, but it's not instead of Siri, it's Alexa. So that's how you communicate
so
with
it's like
the
Alexa
Echo.
is like the operating system.
Like,
of
hey
the
Alexa,
person?
I need
Okay.
tape. Yeah. Okay.
Um,
What's your tech tip?
so my tech tip, and I may be totally wrong here,
Probably.
but on Instagram, it used to be that if I wanted to save a piece of content, the only way to do that was to screenshot. Because if I liked something, I couldn't go back and look at everything I had
No,
liked.
it's a new feature. Yeah.
A new feature, which is
To
the
save.
save tab,
Love it.
which for me is huge because I get ideas all the time that I
And
want.
we always have to mention each other.
I screenshot and I put it into HipChat, or I mention somebody, but I really just want to be able to save this, save that, save this.
Love it.
And there has been a million times where I'm scrolling back through what
Trying
I
to find
think
it.
is the right feed, because I follow like a few other production companies or whatever, and it could be any one of like 3 or 4.
Where did I find that camera setup or
Yeah.
whatever? Yeah.
So, super smart idea. That's
Mm-hmm.
one of those ideas where you can do a seismic shift in content strategy, and for a user like me, that's interesting
By
to
the
think
way-
about. But I'm not going to use that way more.
They got to figure out a way to like automatically update your apps, because a lot of times what happens is you talk around the water cooler like, hey, do you know Instagram to see the new feature, or Snapchat has these new lenses? Like, I don't see them on my phone. Like, oh, you have to update the app. Like, it's such like
but
a
some you don't have to update the app for. Like
Yeah,
this
it's
one, I
true.
didn't
You
update
can
the
push
app.
it.
It was just a brand new feature. But I do like the idea of not auto updating, because the first generation of a new update is usually pretty buggy. So I'll wait for maybe, a couple
I mean, for
things to go
iOS,
through.
yeah, but usually for like the new Snapchat update, the Snapchat's not going to like crash on you just because they updated
Right,
their
but didn't
filter.
you say they made an update and it was harder to like
That's
talk
true.
with people or something?
Yeah.
That for me as a user, I would have been annoyed by that.
Yeah.
So I would have waited for that until they worked out the kinks and then.
But a
done
lot of
the
times,
update.
like I won't notice something until someone says, "Hey, did you see how this new
Right.
thing on this new platform or whatever?" Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, the save tab is like something so little.
Well, Facebook's had that for a while too, to save articles
and save videos and articles, and I use that, and I never go back to them to read them.
yeah.
But with the save tab on Insta, I really do think that I will, because if I see an idea for a Christmas present in November.
By the way,
I'm not gonna
Instagram
know where to
Stories
put
just
that.
came out with stickers, very similar to Snapchat.
Well, Twitter was the first with stickers, weren't they?
Yeah, but they didn't work out too
Yeah,
well.
didn't work out.
All right, so moving on to our current business goals.
I mean, it's all really within the same
Yeah.
umbrella of what we've discussed previously, but scale, scale, scale. We got a lot of great projects. We've got a lot of incoming.
Which I
And-
feel like that you've flip flopped on this a little bit over the past 6 to 9 months, where you don't know if it's like, should we just keep our core 15 and like be the best with those 15, or should we try to move to 30 employees as soon as possible? So I think you've
but
had a little bit of
my thought process, though, has always been the growth direction of how we're growing dictates who we need. So I'm always weary of
should we grow this
hiring
department?
in front of an expectation of growth,
True.
because we've dodged a few bullets in the past where we were like gonna hire this one person, and for whatever reason we were still negotiating, and then something changed, and we were
Yep.
like, oh
Thank
my God,
God.
thank God.
Yep.
So one example was when we're doing production,
Yeah. That's a
when
good
we
example.
needed union labor. So for the first couple projects, we really didn't, because in California it wasn't as big of a deal. When we were brought on to do multiple
And
projects
by union,
in Vancouver and New York and Chicago, we had to have union.
essentially on TV sets, you have to have someone. If he's a videographer or audio editor or what have you, audio capture, he has to have a union card on set. Just the law, the rule.
Right. So we were getting more of those projects, and if they had all been similar to the first, we needed another person like yesterday.
A full-time staff member. Yeah.
But the second, third, and fourth projects, they said, hey, pause, we got to do union. So instead, we became like project managers, and we had to hire union people
Local
to
union.
do the
Yep.
actual work. And we would have had a guy, an expensive guy, sitting in San Diego twiddling his thumbs, because we would have had to use union labor anyway.
Yep.
And then I think there's also like graphic designers we had looked at in the past where it didn't work out, and it would have been fine, of course. We would have been
Right.
able to use them. However, video is so much more important now. So I do think it's a little bit of an ebb and flow. I don't want to stay at a certain number of people necessarily, but I don't want to try and hire in front of
it's
growth
tough.
too far, because now I think community management and copywriting and live
Influencer
tweeting and
outreach.
influencer outreach,
Mhm.
those are a really cool area, as is production.
Mhm.
And it really tells us, like, you go through a few projects, you're like, we definitely need this one
Yep.
person, and we can use them today.
Yep. So my current business goals is we always talk about that, but we have to continue. This should be our New Year's resolution for both of us, to push original content. I think we need to create deadlines and steps to create a ton more in 2017. And I really believe, for our revenue next year, it needs to be 10% of our revenue. Like, we have to make that shift, because you and I know how much original, we're doing it now, obviously, and we're making it an effort to once a week. We're doing this podcast, no matter how busy we are. We're going to prepare for it. We're going to have articles and video and insight. That's a great first step. But I think in 2017, we have to do more original series. We have to publish to some of our own platforms, because I really want to become that BuzzFeed type of model, opposed to 100% of our revenue always coming from client services.
You know what I think we should start doing original content?
What is that?
This very second.
We are.
I love it.
But you know what I mean?
I totally agree. We had a good
that
conversation.
gets kicked around a lot, and we just it always, in 2016 anyway, it was always like, yeah, let's start it up when we're slow, and then
I do think we need to be realistic, though, about revenue.
Yeah.
I think it's going to eat 10% of our revenue rather than earn it. And
But
we
I
just
think
ha-
that's
we
a
just have to
necessary,
be able
right.
to look at that and be comfortable with
set a
this
budget
is going
and do
to
it. Yeah.
this is going to lose us money in the short term, and we have to look at all
And
that
I think
money
even
lost as an
hiring
investment.
somebody for 15 hours a week, and we don't even think of them as an STN Digital employee. They only create for the, whatever we want to do in some of our own properties, and that's going to be a loss for sure. But if you don't start, like, obviously we're not making a ton of money on this podcast, but maybe 50, 100 episodes down the road, it becomes
Not only
one
are
of
we
the best.
Not only are we not making a ton, we're not making any at all.
Yeah, exactly.
That's brought to you by Dixie Cup.
But
Send us
the
some
good
cheese.
news is every single episode, more and more downloads, so you have to start somewhere.
Yeah, and I think, what was really important, too, to go back to the hedgehog concept, I think one of those circles was, you're giving me a weird look.
Well, it's just like, it's funny.
I do think one of those circles, though, mentioned something about passion. Like what you're passionate about
that's
first,
important.
and what you're good at, and what you can be the best at.
Right.
This is fun. I don't walk into this
It's
thinking
true.
like, God, we got another,
It's true.
I'm usually never prepared, but I'm always excited to do it because, it's a fun thing. Afterwards, I feel like, hey, I got a lot off my chest. We talked out some ideas. It forces me to want to read. I'm sure that when you were looking at the book, partially it was because, like, this is the third week in a row.
Yeah,
and I
it
have
was
nothing.
reverse engineer, like I always say. Yeah, this is silly.
So,
We'll talk about your analogy about a delegation that you brought up this week,
yeah, well,
which is kind of morbid in a way, but
it's a little morbid. So, we want to get David and I
This
in
is
our
such a
business
Brett Regan
want to get
analogy.
to a point to where, in terms of the actual work on client projects, in order to really grow and scale, because the finding new people and creating relationships and all that stuff requires so much time and effort and
Yep.
thought, that if we're doing any of the projects, we're limiting the growth of the company.
Yep.
And we put ourselves in a position, with the amount of work that we wanted to say yes to, that we were working on certain projects. But one analogy was, we have a motion designer who is incredibly talented, and if she brought a project to me and there was an issue with it, I don't have the skill set to even dive into that at all and make a change. If a client said, oh, hey, this needs to be changed,
No way.
I'm handcuffed. I can't do it.
Yep.
But that made me think in terms of the analogy was a paraplegic builder. So you can, consult on the plans. You can make all the deals. You can connect all the right people.
Can't swing a hammer.
You can't swing a hammer. You can't go in there and, measure and do the level. You can't do any of it. Even at a supervisory role, you cannot do it. And you really got to be able to find the right people and say, I'm going to put this deal together.
Right.
I'm going to, get the financing.
Essentially,
and I'm going to buy the
way
property.
you said it was like, I want to act like I'm a paraplegic trying to build a home.
Yeah.
There's obviously nothing I can do, but I want to put the right people in place to make it the best home.
Right, and you can't just say, like, well, I can't do it myself, so it can't happen. Yes, you can. You just have to find all the right people. And if you find all the right people, you can be just as successful as a paraplegic home builder as you could if you were a totally amazing carpenter. So
yeah.
I want to look at it in terms of I cannot do any of this work. I have to be able to find people to do it because then, I can secure the work, hand it to people who
are better
at doing it. Yeah. They're excited to do it. I love that idea. So that was my analogy.
What did you say before that made me have you explain that analogy? I forget.
I said the thing about Fiona.
No, but before I asked you to explain the delegation thing, what were you talking about? Do you remember talk back, Mike? Mike's not listening at all.
So we were talking about the hiring process, making things
current
faster.
business goals.
Current business goals with scaling.
Oh, no, I had something to add to that, but we will move on to the classic topic of work-life balance.
Work-life balance. I'll kick it off
all
here.
Right.
So, David and I both joined EO, which is Entrepreneur Organization.
Yep.
Initially, I tend to be a little skeptical.
Yeah.
I think is probably the right word for organizations like this, because what I don't want to do is get into a group of people who are bragging about their
and at the holiday party, I mentioned
success,
to everybody,
whatever.
like, my biggest fear was just a bunch of like, hey, brother, you and I should work together. We can make a lot of money together. Like that, like sleazy salesman type pitch. I did not want that. And with EO, there's certain levels that you have to prove before you can get into it, which I think weeds out a lot of the BSers, which is nice.
And because there was that, financial revenue level that you had to meet to get there, that was what made me a little more skeptical that it was going to be a bunch of people who didn't necessarily need a ton of advice and just wanted to brag and have, a measuring contest, if you will.
Yeah.
And recently I went into the first forum and met with a bunch of great people, and it automatically just made me really think more. I guess the one takeaway from that, less about business and more of just like work-life balance. So with all that said, EO is great. Check it out. But simple little things that I can do to adjust my day just make it so much easier and better.
Yep.
I used to try and be the first one here all the time, and most times I was. I was here at 8 or 8:15, which isn't crazy early.
No.
But I would get up, grab a bottle of water and haul ass and get out the door. And then I realized, like, there's no reason for that.
Yeah.
If there's an urgent email really this
Right.
early, like, I can just write it right here and then buy myself another hour. So even just something as simple as, like, make a little breakfast and eat it before I get here.
And you have the luxury too that you don't have to, rush and clock in, and like you've got it to a point where you don't have to do that. So
yeah, but I took a call at like 7 a.m. the other day, which is really rare. But then after that, I was like, all right, I got to go right now and go get into the office because I felt like my day had started and there was just all this crap going on.
Yeah.
And really, I could have taken that call and gone back to bed for an hour, woke up, had breakfast, got here. And would my day have changed that much in terms of my accomplishments at work? No. But would have changed for the better just in like my attitude and, being fed? Yes. So little changes at home.
Yeah.
Or little changes just like, hey, I'm going to go for a 15-minute walk before I get in my car to go to work.
Yeah.
That doesn't affect negatively your day at work, but it affects positively your attitude. So the benefits outweigh any negatives that there may be. So trying to think in those terms of not just like,
and I feel like with the whole
situation.
EO thing, so the talk you're talking about was essentially like a bunch of entrepreneurs like sitting around in a circle just kind of talking about their ups and their downs and things like that. I guess more of like I want to call it therapy, but
I use it as group therapy just because I wanted to like
group therapy is a good word. But to your point, I really do feel like if 3 months ago I came to you and said, "Hey man, So there's this like cool organization where it's almost like a group therapy thing where you can like talk about your day. You'd be like, dude, I'm not going to get in a circle and talk about my day. Like you would kind of like brush that off. But after going to a few events and talking to a few people, I think it's great because you're able to like go into like, this is actually really, really nice. But maybe at face value, it would have been like, I'm not going to pay money to sit in a circle to talk about my feelings. Like, you know what I mean?
But
like,
even like I was cynical about it to begin with because you were the one that brought it up to me.
Right.
And I will say
that's
that
what something.
I'm cynical, but I'll always give it enough of a chance to like check it out. And after the first breakfast, where it was just a meeting, and that's what I really wanted. Because remember we were asking, they were like, just sign up.
And I was skeptical. I was a little bit too.
Because their initial pitch was like, sign up, and then it's great. And if you really don't like it, and I was like, well, can I meet with some people or some members?
Right.
And we had a lunch
with
meeting,
2 members and like other prospects.
and all the new members were
Good dudes,
totally awesome
gals.
dudes. And I was already in conversations where I was like, this is really interesting what they are doing. And it's nice to hear about other people's businesses, especially when they are completely separate from what you're doing. So I'm skeptical in these, but I'm willing to like give it a chance and go check it out once. And then if there's enough there, I'm like, all right, I'll check it out again. And so, but it's been a good thing.
Great. So for me, you know, obviously, you know, try to work out throughout the week, and you know, I'm in an adult basketball league and stuff. I want to set some goals outside of the STN umbrella, just more personal goals, a little outside the comfort zone, because I feel like I don't have a wife, I don't have a kid, so even at family reunions during this holiday season, like, how's everything going? Like, business is great, got a ton of employees, and it's always business.
Right.
I think maybe for you, you'd be like, hey, you know, we just bought a house, or you know, Corinne's pregnant, expecting. Those are more personal things you can speak about. So I think just more, you know, bucket list type items where I can say I competed at this, or I'm training for this, or whatever that may be. I think
Marathon with no training, perhaps.
I don't like running, but yeah, whatever those things it might be worth, you know, sitting down and coming up with some personal bucket list items that are under the STN umbrella.
Yeah. So to go back to the EO forum thing, they suggest that you list out and you give like a score of business, family, and personal. And I was kind of thinking like, well, what's the difference between family and personal? Because for me, it just feels like my personal life is like you mentioned, like, oh, how are you doing? And I'm like, oh, you know, we got a kid on the way.
That's always we. It's not Brett. Yeah.
Right. And I realized like, what am I doing for myself? And it's nothing.
Yeah.
It really isn't. And that was the group therapy part, is I talked a little bit about saying, you know, I really like surfing. And every time I go surf before work, I'm in a great mood all week. Like, it's that good to where it like, and it could be a shitty day out. I could not catch anything. Just getting up, getting in the water, and, you know, chatting. And a lot of times I'll go with a friend.
And even sometimes that you and I have played golf, I never agree with people playing 4 rounds of golf a week. I think it's an extreme waste of time. But every once in a while, a couple times a month, it is kind of therapeutic because you're out there on the grass and it's sunny and you're just talking with your friend. And now as we get older, if you have buddies from college or what have you, you very rarely have a 4-hour window, because you're not going to go to dinner for 4 hours, where you can just talk and shoot the, you know what. So even that becomes a little therapeutic to do something like that. I totally
agree. But like, you know, there's a big difference between saying like, I need to go to the gym because I need to get in shape. I like going to the gym. I like surfing.
You like deadlifting.
I like golfing.
Nuts.
I like all those things, and I don't do it. And partially that's because I will work a lot, and then that takes away from family time. So then when I'm not working, I feel like 100% of that time has to be dedicated to family time. And then I wind up thinking well, I shouldn't go surfing because like I worked Saturday night on a project, and like I'm not going to like.
But we talked about this. So it seems like if you give more to work for a certain week, you feel guilty because you didn't give enough to the family time. If for whatever reason you totally checked out Friday, Saturday, and Sunday because it was all about family, you then feel guilty at work that you need to like overdo it at work the next week. So it's always like this constant.
Right. But I think, you know, I'm glad that you brought that up, because it is really important too, because you can say like, hey, family's great. I talked to my parents. I talk to my sister all the time.
Yeah.
Business is going great.
What is David Brickley
doing?
What
have you accomplished specifically?
True.
So that makes me look at things. I've been talking about climbing Mount Rainier for a long time. I really want to do it. And then I'm thinking like, well, I'm having a kid and I'm not going to be able to. I have to be able to find a way to do all of those things, because it will make me better here. It'll make me better at home. It'll make me better altogether. And then just, you know, finding the time to where if I don't absolutely have to work on a Saturday night.
Yeah, but the Adam Carolla model, which he mentioned this on an older podcast, but he just puts stuff on the calendar 3 months out. Like, hey, what are you doing March 24th?
Yeah.
You have no idea. March 24th, I'm hiking Mount Rainier. I don't care if it's a Thursday, whatever.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, you're like, oh, shit, next week I'm hiking Mount Rainier. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I think some of that stuff, even we did that with the My Fitness University thing yesterday, I just put on the calendar.
Yeah.
And very rarely do you see on the calendar like, no, I'm going to have to push it. Like we've been pretty good about, even with this show, there's multiple times we could have been like, let's just push it to tomorrow. Let's push it to later today.
We
and
put it on
just
the
do
calendar and we
Yeah.
just figure it out.
Right.
But it's also something where it is really helpful too, because if it was just me or if it was just you, I don't know, but we may have pushed it.
Yeah, it's
But
true.
because it's like, we're both here, we're going to make it happen. Like we talked about it.
Someone's
Let's
relying
do
on
this.
you to do your part of it.
Right.
Yeah.
But so one thing that I want to bring up, my buddy Mike Spillman, who you know,
Yeah.
he has had this terrible history of like, just booking stuff way in advance, and then he's like, oh my God, I have all this regret from doing this. And it's usually some sort of like marathon or trip or something like that. So he's like, I'm like, oh, what'd you do? He's like, oh man, like I freaking booked this, marathon in Hawaii. And every time I talk to him, there's some other thing like this, and he's all pissed off about himself for doing it.
But then when he
He
does
does
it,
them every year. He's got like 7
Yeah.
amazing things that he does. So I was joking around with him. We went and had brunch with him the other day, but I was like, I almost want to give you like a limited debit card that's tied to my account. And then you're
you
just
have
gonna
to book it for me.
It has to be 60 days out, but you have an obligation to book stuff. So when you see something like this is the marathon, because he's the one who's always pinging me like, hey,
You wanna
this
do
is
that?
coming up, and, hey,
Ah.
that's coming up, and then
I'll
I'm
let you
always
know.
thinking like, well, I don't know if
Yeah.
I'll be able to do it, even though there's nothing on the calendar right then, but just book it. And I'm like, hey, I got this thing, so we're gonna have to move.
Well,
on
I,
that.
my buddy turned 30. He wanted to do like just a day trip to Vegas. Fuzzy, who you know, and that was when our largest client asked us like, "Is there any way you can get a team out to LA this day?" I'm like, "No."
Yeah.
Like it's been booked for 2 months. I'm not going to tell him like, "Sorry, brother, work." Like it's just as important.
Right.
So no.
And that is a personal thing. That's like a friend.
And if he called me last minute, like, "Can you do this?" Like, no, my client needs me in LA.
exactly.
Like same thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, book it out. All right. So moving on to our media spotlight. Mike, talk back, Mike, if you can cue this up. I have a video from just I came across of Michael Jordan talking about practice, which I thought was relevant to what we're doing.
Was fear of failure a motivator?
I never feared about my skills, because I put in the work.
Put him away, MJ.
Work ethic eliminates fear.
Yes.
So if you put forth the work, then what are you fearing? You know what you're capable of doing, what you're not.
Jordan left side.
I practice as if I'm playing in a game. So when the moment comes in the game, it's not new to me. That's the beauty of the game of basketball. That's the reason why you practice. That's the effort. So when you get to that moment, you don't have to think. Instinctively, things happen.
I feel like some of the best sports guys ever have always had that mentality. So they shoot that same jump shot 14,000 times. So when it's Game 7 in the NBA Finals, it's muscle memory at that point.
Yep.
But I think we practice that a lot here internally, and we're doing this with one of our current projects, like rehearsal after rehearsal after rehearsal. But I feel like we've done a pretty good job over the last year or so. When we show up on site, we've done it so many times already that it's not a huge stressful event because we know what may go wrong, and we know our backup plan to the backup plan. I've talked a lot about this during this podcast, but that just reiterated another part of it where if you practice enough, there's no fear because work ethic eliminates it.
Yeah. And, one thing, because of the industry and then just our, internal thought processes, we're always trying to push it. So if we went 6 months of doing the exact same thing where we were like, this is easy, clockwork.
Yeah.
I think we would get a little nervous or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we're not stretching our capabilities. We're not figuring out how to do new things. So
But I remember in the beginning of our company, the first 6 months, you and I, every time we had a phone call, we would go into the conference room, or at that point my bedroom, and talk out the call for 30 minutes before the call. How's it going to go? Are you going to lead? Am I going to lead? And especially when it came to any kind of negotiation with the client, we would have an hour and a half long meeting that week about, okay, we have to call on Thursday, so let's whiteboard out. And now I feel like, if we had a sit down meeting with Mark Cuban in an hour, like, all right, let's do it.
right.
Just because we've done it so much. But in the beginning, it was like all this preparation. What are we going to do? And emails to clients, we would spend 30 minutes on, and you would read every word I say and vice versa. And now emails, you just send it out and do your thing. But I think that in the beginning stages to make sure you got it right was important. And now it's like clockwork, like you mentioned.
Well, I think partially that is to do, we just didn't have that much work to do.
That's
so
true too.
everything, it was like everybody wanted to pour all their efforts into the one output that we were doing.
The
which was, like,
business
sales and going
The
out.
business hinged on that one email to see if they said yes or whatever.
Right, and now it's like we have so many other things going on. It's like,
But I do think since we've done it, since we've been on 1,000 calls now, or been to hundreds of different sit-down meetings, it just becomes like very easy, and
right.
you can do it in your sleep.
After almost 4 years of doing all these kind of projects, what prep do we need? Like,
Yeah,
we've
exactly.
already done the project.
That's true.
So if somebody brings something up, I have, we've got all those in the can. We're going to say like, oh, for this project we did this. Is this something that could work potentially?
Right.
So it's a lot more of a conversation now than it is a pitch at all, which I like as a sales. Like, I don't like to be sold to anyway. I like to have a conversation where if it's a good fit, it's a good fit. If not, no biggie.
And you almost feel like sometimes you're name dropping, but it's like, well, this just makes sense to what you're talking about. Here's what we did very similar to what you're talking about for this client.
Right.
And it just ends up being like, yeah, we can do that because we just
it
did
really
that.
is- Yeah, it's just explaining case studies, and, those usually help.
All right, so your media spotlight is?
My media spotlight is the great Oprah.
Oprah and MJ. This is a bunch of goats on the podcast.
Can you bring up the commercial? This is a new commercial for her Weight Watchers
So we're going to watch this on Facebook
campaign,
Live.
which is Live Fully.
Since I started Weight Watchers, I've lost over 40 pounds. I can honestly tell you, I struggle no more. I've eaten everything I love. Tacos, pasta. I've never felt deprived. I would say to anybody who's thinking about joining Weight Watchers, take the leap and get about the business of enjoying a fantastic and full life.
In the first 2 months, members have lost 15% more weight than on our prior program.
Before you start, I'm just going to say, I wrote this down because of my media spotlight. Jordan, net worth $1.24 billion. A basketball player is worth over $1 billion. Oprah, $2.9 billion.
Yep.
Not too shabby for those two.
Yeah, so you guys may remember that Oprah purchased 10% of Weight Watchers in October 2015.
Okay.
And as soon as she did that, the stock skyrocketed over 170%.
Jeez.
And the headlines were that Oprah made $100 million in a day. Now, of course, part of her 10% stake was that she couldn't immediately sell because they knew that there was going to be a big spike in that. However, the stock kind of went up and down over and over the last year or so. But with this commercial coming out and with her proclamation of losing 40 pounds, the stock has rebounded and it jumped up 18%. So Oprah's value in her stake of 6.4 million shares is now valued at $79 million. So overall, it's looking like this stake in Weight Watchers for Oprah could potentially turn out to be a long-term good buy for her.
How much does she pay for the 10%?
I don't know exactly how much she pays.
It'd be interesting to see what her spread is
actual,
on.
earnings on
But
that.
maybe she's just not she's not charging them for any type of endorsement.
She's not. I mean, at 10%, she's considered a huge vested owner at this point. So anything that she's doing.
But I wonder if
here
they're
is
like,
not
we'll
a
give you
separate
10%
deal.
if you do A, B, C, D, and E. This commercial, this this speech. I feel like Body Armor did something similar with Kobe, but he actually, I think he invested in the actual product.
Yeah, but it's I think it's interesting. This could be a good fit with more like meal delivery services starting to sprout up. I think Oprah paired with Weight Watchers.
Well, Weight
if they
Watchers is
started doing
interesting
some really
because
good
you can
delivery.
it's a point system because my mom and grandma, they've done it before where you can eat anything. Everything just has a point value. So you have 24 points a day, and your apple's a point, and your yogurt's 0 points because it's good for you or what have you. But if you have like a muffin, it's 7 points. So do you really want to eat that muffin?
Right.
So you just, I think it helps you with actual food instead of like, I think what's the other one? Not Weight Watchers.
Jenny Craig.
Yeah, you have to like order the food and it's all frozen and it has to come to you. So I feel
Yeah,
like
but
that's a more practical way to do it.
I mean, I really look at if you were, the CEO of Weight Watchers, would food be a part of your strategy?
I like their business model because, like I said, it teaches you how to eat healthy with food out there. Because, I mean, I don't think it's conceivable. Say for the next 30 years, I'm going to buy Jenny Craig frozen meals so I can keep the weight off. I think this teaches you, like, what different things are, and it almost teaches you nutrition during it. I think it's just more practical.
From my standpoint, so for viewers out there, we have a meal delivery service now.
Yeah.
David and I, and twice per week they come and bring not frozen but fresh food to us. I really think, I mean, even going back to the Amazon conversation, at a certain point in time, people are just not going to want to go to the grocery store, and they're not going to want to cook every single meal. So I really enjoy cooking, but if it's an obligation every single night of the week, it totally sucks. So I do see like the Blue Apron type service if you want to cook a meal on a Saturday night and have like a bottle of wine or whatever, and then throughout the week getting good meal delivery services coming in.
What I do like about their business model is you don't necessarily have to buy their food in order to participate in the program, which I think is decent.
It's a little more of a
I think you go to like
man to fish too. It's
weekly weigh-in meetings with like a group of other people, which is usually female. And it kind of, again, just like this podcast, I'm going to read this chapter of this book because I'm not going to come for a third straight week empty-handed. So it just gives you a little motivation, I think.
So the value of Oprah's stake jumped to just under $79 million thanks to the 18% spike, but only added $8 million to her share
So she
price.
paid $71 million.
Yes. So to her personal net worth, that's the only thing that it gained. The rally added $117 million to the company's market cap. So, for Oprah, not a huge win, but for the company overall, pretty substantial. And it'll be interesting to see these.
What made you think of this? You just saw this commercial on your feed?
Well, I mean, initially this was a huge business story. Oprah's got a lot of money.
I just said worth $3.9 billion.
2.9
or $2.9 billion.
Yeah, $2.9 billion. So I think what was interesting about this is it didn't feel like Oprah hawking a product because she doesn't. So for her, I mean, she found a company she really believed in, bought 10% of it, and then has lost 40 pounds. So it's almost like influencer activation meets, investment.
And it's a perfect demographic. I feel like everybody over 35 years old remembers because Oprah's not on the TV every single day anymore, at least if you don't have own network. But she used to be front and center, probably one of the biggest celebrities in the world. And now she's kind of taken a back seat as she's gotten older. But Weight Watchers is going right after that 35 to 65-year-old market all day long.
And it doesn't feel like, well, why would Oprah be talking about this? Oprah has been candid about
with weight
issues with weight forever. So I think that when someone looks at her versus like a fitness model, if you were to get some chick up there who looks like,
if she can do it,
I've got 3 kids and I'm in really good shape and I did it, versus Oprah, where they can look at them and say, like, I relate to her because I've had issues with weight fluctuations. I think it was just a really good fit, and this is kind of one of those investments and relationships that I'm rooting for, I guess.
You going to join Weight Watchers?
I may have to if I can't get my work-life balance together and start hitting the gym.
All right, Q&A and advice section of the show. I will go first.
Okay.
I think communication, I've had a few friends come to me about their issues with their employer. I feel a lot of it's been communication. I think internally we've had a few issues with I've accidentally scheduled somebody. Like someone's came to me and said, hey, I can't work past 4 on Friday. And I've just automatically made their schedule and forgot about that statement. And then they come to me like, hey, I said 4. Like, oh, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. But I feel like a lot of employees can hold resentment. Like I went to him and I told him 4. How dare he disrespect me and schedule me until 6. Like, you just disrespected me and hold all this resentment and be pissed off for a week or 2 weeks. And all it takes is like, hey, real quick, so I noticed my schedule, there probably is a mistake. And I think just hearing some of my friends and family talk about their employers, I'm like, well, just tell them. If you feel like you're slighted or you feel like they really screwed you over, then tell them how you feel. Because I think in our situation, we'll be like, here's why we did it, or sorry about that. But I think a lot of people just get really pissed off about a situation when it's really as easy as, hey, here's what you did and here's why I don't think it's okay. And sometimes just mistakes happen, and it's a simple miscommunication rather than we're going to screw over employee number 9 because we don't give a shit about, whatever. So
right. And I really think that it goes both ways. I think that there's probably a lot of employers who feel like maybe an employee disrespects them or didn't do what they had
so you just
said.
Put out in the
and
open.
It's an issue of communication.
Yeah.
We had like a little powwow with a couple of our employees, and we talked about a couple things, and it came down to the fact that it was a total miscommunication.
And that happens on email. It happens verbally.
What we said and what we thought that we were putting to them as a deadline or a project or whatever it was, they said, oh, well, here's how we thought of it because of this. And then just being able to talk it out.
But if you don't have
by the time we left the room,
It's
there
all
was
good.
no issues.
But if you didn't have that conversation, you would have held this like the principle of it is nobody respects me, and this is
and if it's just
weird
you and me talking about like, well, they did this and didn't do that, then you feel this certain thing.
Anger
but then,
or whatever,
but
yeah.
if you communicate, but it's like any relationship, it
True.
really is. If you have something that's annoying, you got to be able to bring it up, and I think you and I do a pretty good job of that. If there's something that's annoying about each other, or somebody did something, it's
that's
like,
why it works. 'Cause,
hey,
yeah.
this thing I'm not a huge fan of, and then we can just like, all right, whatever.
Yep.
Get past it.
So I think, if you're an employee out there, what have you, and something really, really irks you, like rather than being pissed off for 6 weeks, like just mention it. And if someone, let's say someone's, I cannot work Christmas Eve, I'm flying back home, and we schedule you Christmas Eve, and you say, hey, I told you, like, yeah, too bad. Well, then that also gives you a lot of clarity too. Like, obviously, this employer doesn't give a shit about me. They don't respect my family. They don't respect my time off. So I'm probably going to maybe find a new job. And that's something that is helpful, too, if you can get that clarity. So either way, the communication, even if they give you what you don't want to hear, it still, I think, is helpful for the, overall.
Yep, I agree. Okay, so for my advice, it is find like-minded individuals, which can be difficult.
Yep.
So a lot of people call it networking or
going on over there?
anything else, but to find like-minded individuals is super important. I think a lot of like self-help groups, obviously if you go to AA, you have something automatically in common with all these people, so you can open up more about your experiences. If you find like-minded individuals or people that are doing the same thing as you are, it's a lot easier to be like, okay, well, we have that in common.
Yeah.
So now I feel more comfortable talking about other things. And
True.
it can be really uncomfortable, especially if you are in your late 20s, early 30s, because you feel like you're going out on dates, which makes it
I'm
feel
telling you,
really
you got to
weird.
watch I Think I Love You, man. It's exactly it.
But it's like you have to put yourself out there. And,
Yeah.
My wife and I have this conversation all the time for her because she works from home.
Mm-hmm.
But she doesn't want to go out there and be like, will you be my friend? Because it feels really uncomfortable. But the alternative is
You have no friends.
you have no friends, and it's really, really easy to
Right.
have no friends when you're busy.
Yep.
Because, how many people are hitting you up every Saturday like, hey, let's come out and party? It's rare.
Well, that happened when I was 22, and I said no 14 times in a row, and that stopped.
Because you were busy.
Yeah.
And I think if you went through school, and that's, my issue was I was going through school, and then I was working in financial services, and I had all these tests to take, and people would say, can you go out? And I couldn't for two reasons. One, I had no time, and secondly,
money.
I didn't want to spend any money.
Mm-hmm.
So you do say no to all those people that long, and they're going to be like, oh, they're busy. So, yeah, finding like-minded individuals and then just kind of sacking up a little bit and saying, like, I'm okay to say, like, hey, would you like to go grab coffee?
Right.
And just chat.
Yep.
Which can seem really weird, but if somebody asked me that, I'd be like, oh, great.
You're flattered. Right.
Yeah, it is flattering.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's, that part, and then just kind of, if somebody asked you the same thing, how would you react? That's probably the way they'll feel. I doubt
True.
there's many people to be like, what? You want to go have coffee? Like, bro, don't you have any friends? Like, that's not how the reaction's going to be. So try that. It's good.
All right, so for the quote of the week, I will go first. I got two for you. I got a bonus one.
Oh, wow.
The first one I sent you earlier this week. If you delegate tasks, you create followers. If you delegate authority, you create leaders, which is a beautiful quote just based on what we've been working on here internally. And then the second is from my grandfather. How about that? I had a family reunion, and my uncle actually had this printed and passed it out to a lot of us. But it really speaks to what I'm all about as well. And the quote is, attitude is everything and misery is optional, which I think if you live by that, it could always be worse. So even if you have the worst day in the world, like is cancer running through your body? No. Yeah, it could be a lot worse.
Right.
Always look at that. Is your family okay? Is there not a,
Did everybody at the event take that?
He passed it out, yeah.
To everybody. Did anybody feel like they're talking to me particularly?
Well, my uncle who printed it out, he actually printed it out because he was not following that advice.
Okay.
And it kind of helped him through a certain situation. So he's like, him and I just kind of jammed on it for a while. I'm like, yeah, man. I mean, and even on my worst day, I have it better than, in my opinion, 95% of people. So I'm not gonna complain.
Very cool.
All right.
So my quote is in the same vein about delegation, but this was a quote from The Outsiders, and I'm sorry that I don't have the person who said it, but they were talking about a company called Teledyne, and all of the, regional offices were like really on their own. And one of the, senior managers at one of the regional areas was talking specifically about the CEO and said that he would delegate to the point of anarchy.
Oh, I remember you saying this, yeah.
And, this was a company that was wildly successful. And you said, people would say you'd walk in there and you couldn't figure out who the boss was because everybody had responsibilities for certain things. And from the top level down, this was not something where they said, here is our corporate culture and here's exactly how you do X, Y, and Z. And sometimes I feel like we need to do that. And in certain examples, it works really well. For example, Wells Fargo. Very clear corporate culture, very clear training, and they've been wildly successful in that area. So it doesn't mean that this is the one way to do it, but it's a way where somebody has done it where they've really delegated out, and these, it was essentially like he was running a bunch of independent businesses, and those businesses